Good morning, everyone. Lots going on as usual. Today is Wednesday, September 3rd, 2025. Oh, and I've got the wrong screen up right now. And volunteer coach, there was a volunteer coach who was fired for a TikTok video on trans violence, basically. And we've got that story for you this morning. Western Standard's giving us some details. And at first I thought this is a bad story. And the more I looked into it, the worse it got. I was like, oh my gosh. This is unbelievable. I can't believe this is happening. Of course, I can believe this is happening. This is Canada. Northvolt is dead. That's $270 million in taxpayer dollars lost. Can be up to $500 million depending on how this whole thing plays out. Doug Ford looks like an idiot and pours Crown Royal out on the ground, and it takes a lot longer than he anticipates. So he expects it to take 30 seconds and it takes 2 minutes, and he doesn't have enough to say. So he's kind of quiet and he's just standing there holding the bottle upside down. And the whole thing's ridiculous because it's ridiculous. He's trying to make a point, but he's pouring Canadian whiskey out. What are you doing, you moron? Anyway, no men in the NDP. We've got a leadership race, and the details are such that if you have 500 signatures and more than 250 of them are from men, then you're disqualified from. That's not enough. You have to have 250 signatures from women or people who identify as women. So whatever, men too, but men who are mentally ill, and then you can be the nominee, or then your signatures count. So that's completely ridiculous. We'll get to that later in the show. Kian is being criminally investigated for a report that happened during the election, and digital ID in the United Kingdom to crack down on the migrants. Yep, the conspiracy theorists are batting 10 out of 10. So there's lots to get to. Let's get to it. First, we've got to start with crime, and what's going on in the courts is criminal. What's going on the ground in Canada is criminal, and nobody's doing a darn thing to stop any of it. And here's the latest news from the JCCF. Theo Fleury says, this is how the communists do it, folks. Go ahead or go against the government and you lose your job. Only cowards never want to face consequences. John Carpe is a good man, and Theo met him many times. When good lawyers like John get disbarred, you know the government is doing illegal stuff. And CIM Donald says, based JCCF lawyer disbarred by Law Society of Alberta, date of decision September 2nd. Hey, that's yesterday. Oh my gosh, right? So the day after Labor Day. Pretty wild stuff. The Law Society of Alberta has officially disbarred John Carpe, president of the JCCF Canada, effective September 2nd, 2025. The disbarment means Carpe is no longer permitted to practice law, represent clients, or perform legal services in Alberta. So that's pretty wild. Here's the notice, and it says, on September 2nd, 2025, a hearing committee of the Law Society of Alberta ordered John Carpe disbarred, effective immediately. At the time of the disbarment, Mr. Carpe was a suspended member of the Law Society of Alberta. The hearing committees sanctioned Mr. Carpe for the following conduct: failing to discharge all of his responsibilities to his client, tribunals, the public, and other members of the profession honorably and with integrity. The hearing committee also ordered that Mr. Carpe pay costs in the amount of $7,457.50. The full written decision of the hearing committee is posted to the Law Society of Alberta website if you're interested in reading more. So I'll be interviewing Mr. Carpe on September 11th, probably. I have that set up, so maybe it'll continue. I think so. So I'll ask him about that when I talk to him. But it seems like if you stand up against this government in a way that is serious, they will deal with you in one way or another. And we've seen lots of lawfare. We've seen it used against Tamara Litch and Chris Barber. We've seen it used against all sorts of different convoy people, and now they're aiming it against lawyers too, and that's concerning. The other day there was a murder in a home. This is the father who was murdered in front of his children and his wife, and the police said there must be some commonality. The murdered victim knew the murderer, so there's no public worry. There's no public threat. Everything's fine. Don't worry about people breaking into your home. They broke into his home because the murderer knew him. And so this is weird to me. It stands out a little bit. Now, Mr. Leche is just saying, he was at my barbecue and he's my friend and he's dead now, and so on and so forth. So I have questions. I have questions. Stephen Leche says, I want to pay tribute to a friend. Only 2 weeks ago, I spent time with Alim Farouki and his son at my community barbecue. This is the photo. There you go. There's the photo. And he says, while protecting his children, Alim was brutally and tragically killed in his home, an unimaginable tragedy for his family and for the entire community. He was a loving father, family man, and generous community leader with a big heart. Justice is owed to his wife, 3 youngest kids, and entire family who will forever carry this pain. They have a simple demand. If you commit a violent crime, you face serious jail time. We owe this to Aleem and to every victim of crime in our community. His memory and bravery will not be forgotten. I don't know how the politicians can know this is going on and not have all hands on deck meetings about what we're going to do in the face of the federal government completely betraying justice. Are these guys okay with people breaking into their homes and killing people in front of their family, like being killed in front of their family? It seems like they're taking this as a third party, like it happened to somebody else, and not could have easily happened to them in their neighborhood too, because of all the criminals just roaming around with access and the ability to just break in and kill you, unless you're already known. And the police say, oh yeah, well, they were already known to this guy and there's no public threat, no concern for public safety. Weird. In maybe unrelated, but I don't know who committed this crime. Here's Mario, and Mario says they broke into people's houses. Okay, Mario says he poured gasoline on the family and lit them on fire. Nowhere in the news. Ontario and indeed Canada is a crime-ridden hellhole at this point in time. It's unbelievable. Nowhere in the news. This is much worse than the Wild West. Liberals live in a bubble. They think it's all rainbows and flowers, and our prime minister is tweeting about Afghanistan. See, that's what I'm... Afghanistan earthquake? What? Okay. I didn't even hear about it until this morning. And I'm like, fine, but we've got issues in Canada, yo. Our Afghanistan, get out of here with that BS. So here's the report, because there's nothing on the news, but Mario covers it, and he goes to the police website, and credit where it's due. This is where I saw it. So here we go.
This is nuts. Watch this. Something for you to investigate. There's an incident in Windsor this weekend where a guy poured gasoline on a family and lit them on fire. No details are being released, but guess where they're from. Don't mention my name, please. I couldn't find anything online, so I went on the police website, and sure enough, it says 4 injured, suspect arrested after a house fire. Pouring gasoline on a family and lighting them on fire, I guess, is technically a house fire, but it's not very accurate, is it? But he's going to be facing these charges: attempted murder, arson, disregard for human life, break and enter, and forcible confinement. You see, whether the Liberal Party or Sean Fraser wants to admit it or not, this is worse than the Wild West. Break and enters are getting worse. They're becoming more common. As you see, people are now being lit on fire. Zero, and I mean zero, news coverage on this. This is nuts. Watch this.
Well, the news is not incentivized to talk about this. And I want to highlight here, it says attempted murder. He will face the following charges. Attempted murder, 3. There were 3 people in the bed. He lit the bed on fire. He tried to light this family on fire. Arson with disregard for human life. And nobody wants to cover it. I'm shocked. I mean, unfortunately, I'm not that shocked. Sean is responding to the Indians who are shooting off the bridge, and he says Canadian mainstream media is still silent on this. Yeah, well, they're not reporting on people breaking into each other's houses and lighting entire families on fire either, so shocking, right? And there are no updates from the OPP or RCMP, despite having their SM accounts, social media accounts, info, and their license plate numbers. What is the message being sent to the Canadian people here? They don't care. They don't care about what's going on. They're not interested in doing any kind of investigation at all. And Andy Lee, there she goes, there, sorted. It's coming by Canada Post, so it might take a bit longer than initially thought. But she says, all right, I'll run the plate for goodness sake. We'll know the identity of the Muskoka shooters in 5 to 7 business days, or maybe a little bit longer. So Truth She Will says the OPP know who it is. They're slow walking to give them time to formulate a legal strategy. Must be someone important to the Laurentian elite establishment. Citizens, let's help the police identify them. And so Andy Lee says, I'll get it. And so it's coming by Canada Post. So we'll find out. She's running the license plate. And I wonder why this group of people who are, it looks like Indian Sikhs, shooting off a bridge, why they're legally protected. Here's somebody with a theory, and she's talking about the fentanyl trade in Canada. Here we go.
This is a perfect example of what happens under weak leadership.
It's all happening in Canada now. And it's so obvious. It started during Trump's first administration when he first started cracking down on the southern border. Cartels knew they could go into Canada and they didn't need a visa like they needed to get into the US. They could just go, set up shop, negotiate and network with pre-existing organized crime groups in Canada and say, hey, look, you guys have incredible access, over 5,000 miles of practically unprotected border into the United States. We can produce this product here and traffic it. And what do we have in Vancouver? The Port of Vancouver. And where are the fentanyl precursors coming in? From China. Less than 1% of cargo that comes into the Port of Vancouver is actually inspected.
Less than how much?
Less than 1%.
Less than 1%?
That is an official number, yes.
Are you saying in addition to Mexico produced fentanyl, or it's all moved to Canada?
I think the majority is moved to Canada.
This is a perfect.
Yeah. Yep. And so, well, later in the show, I've got Trump bombing or taking out a drug boat from Venezuela. And he's saying that Venezuela is not actually being run by a legitimate government. They're being run by a narco cartel. And they're going to take out the narco cartel that's running Venezuela and free it. And so we'll see how that all goes. Holy cow, right? Anyway, here's back to Dean. He says, this isn't quite true. The Ontario police told the locals. So Joe Warmington says, locals say the illegal shooting parties have been going on at Tower Road for 2 years, but they say there were people shooting there last Saturday as well. And Dean says, this isn't quite true. The Ontario police told the locals to stop complaining about the Muskoka Bridge shooting fests by Indo gangsters. They only started an investigation 4 days ago because the videos and photos went viral and the Toronto Sun picked up the story. Yep. So that's interesting. Here is when the system fails, this is what happens. So in Spain, hooded men attack young migrants over rape of a 14-year-old. So people are going to come out. If the police don't do anything to stop the crime, people are going to come out and do it anyway. And so that's exactly what the right or what the left wants. So then they can say, look at these right-wing extremists. They're basically Nazis. And then like we have to take them out. We have to use facial recognition and AI. We have to find them and then arrest them. And it'll be just like January 6th, right? It'll be just like going after those kind of people. And so, but this is what happens when the system refuses to deal with real issues. And instead police are weaponized against people like comedy writers, like in the United Kingdom, or in Canada, like weaponizing against Kian Bexte. Kian says, I'm being criminally investigated by the Carney government and threatened with 5 years in prison for reporting news that embarrassed the Liberal Party of Canada during a democratic election. Read the full facts and full investigation at Defund Juno here. So yes, that's going on. He's got a video. And here is Defund Juno. And he says, this one's important. You can watch my full statement at the bottom of this message, but please read first. I'm under criminal investigation for my election reporting after Juno News published source reporting containing allegations about Liberal candidate Thomas Keeper. And after the Liberal Party dropped him from the ballot, Ottawa moved to use Section 91(1) of the Canada Elections Act against me, a law Elections Canada's own former chief electoral officer recommended repealing for being vague and chilling to political speech. And so here's the letter he received. Dear Kian Bexte, you're receiving this letter because the Commissioner of Canada Elections has started an investigation. It examines allegations that you may have violated the Canada Elections Act, and charges may be laid against you under the Act as a result of this investigation. Based on our initial review, it appears that on or about March 26, 2025, and again, on or about March 28, 2025, you published articles in Juno News alleging that then Liberal Party candidate Thomas Keeper had conducted himself in a manner that amounted to an offense pursuant to the Criminal Code and Act of Parliament. Specifically, you allege that he committed sexual assault and common assault. The allegations have been denied as being false. Under the Act, it is illegal to make a false statement that a candidate has committed an offense under the Act of Parliament. Subsection 991A of the Act states that no person or entity shall, with the intention of affecting the results of an election, make or publish during the election period false statements that a prospective candidate, the leader of a political party, or a public figure associated with the political party has committed an offense under an act of parliament or a regulation made under an act, or under an act of legislation or a province, or under regulation made under such an act, or has been charged with or is under investigation for such an offense. What is an investigation? The commissioner is responsible for investigating cases of potential wrongdoing under the Act. Investigations help the commissioner gather facts and information to better understand what may have taken place. You can learn more about investigations by looking at our compliance and enforcement policy here. And then they say, what happens next? You are not required to cooperate with the investigation. You will not be arrested or detained, but what you say or the information you provide could be used as evidence. You may contact a lawyer of your choice at any time. The undersigned is the investigator assigned to this file. You may reach them by email at here or phone here. Please include a file number located at the top of the letter in all communications with our office. And so that's interesting. And somebody said, as much as I hate this government, Bexty is known for making false statements and or just leaving out the truth. And I said, oh, can you give some examples? And I'd completely forgotten, but this is a good example. They responded and said, Maxime Bernier's supposed trip to Davos to be part of the globalist WEF, when he actually went there at the directive of his CPC prime minister to get help with equipment for our military. What was the obvious truth missing from his reporting was which candidate was always against the globalist UN climate cult and who is still to this day refuses to denounce the Paris Accord. Then there was Max's Florida house. And what did he report it as? Oh, that's right. He called it a villa. It turns out to be a hurricane-damaged house without even a garage, bought by his wife from an inheritance from a relative that passed away. He is no better than the sleazy liberal-controlled media. So, yeah, there's certainly some holes in Kian's reporting, and that's accurate. And should he be threatened with 5 years in jail for that? I don't think so, probably, right? Like, I think that that's probably a step too far, if you ask me. I hope we can get through this. I wanted to get through this series before I kill the stream. So we're doing the transgender stuff and the coach who got fired for posting on TikTok. So people were talking yesterday about Danielle Smith announcing that they're removing books from elementary schools, and there was an order by I think it's the education minister. Is this guy the education minister? I think so. Alberta's Minister of Education and Childcare. So this is Dimitrios Nicolaides, and he says, interesting, I've got Greek news at the end of this series too. So that's a funny coincidence. Anyway, he's the Minister of Education, and he rescinded his previous order because the school boards were using that order and removing things like Catcher in the Rye or any books at all that had anything to do with sex or growing up or anything like that. And that's not the intention. Graphic novels that depict sex acts in picture and pornography was the goal, not removing classics from the library. And so the school boards are trying to start a war with the government and trying to blame the government, saying, oh, you're censoring us, and oh, you're behaving in a bad way, when it's really the school boards that are behaving in a bad way. And so the education minister, Nicolaides, says, after becoming aware of a list of over 200 books that the Edmonton Public Schools intended to remove off their shelves, I will be revising the order immediately to ensure that our classic literary works remain in school libraries, while books with graphic pornographic images, such as those depicted below, do not end up in the hands of children. And so that's good news. I think personally that's good news. Also, what's her name? Margaret Atwood. Here's National Post. Margaret Atwood's weighing in on this, and it's ridiculous, as you would expect. National Post says, Canadian author Margaret Atwood has penned a satirical short story suitable for teens in response to Alberta's book ban. And it's not teens that are the problem, Margaret Atwood. And here is the piece, and it's bullshit. It's such nonsense. I'll read just a little bit of it, but I'm not going to read all of it because she's stupid. So Margaret Atwood says, here's a piece of literature by me suitable for 17-year-olds in Alberta schools, unlike, we are told, The Handmaid's Tale. I don't think that the Smith government was going to remove The Handmaid's Tale, and that's what the order was rescinding. Here's just a bit of it. John and Mary were both very, very good children. They never picked their noses or had bowel movements or zits. They grew up married each other and produced 5 perfect children without ever having sex. Although they claimed to be Christian, they paid no attention to what Jesus actually said about the poor and the Good Samaritan and forgiving your enemies and such. Instead, they practiced selfish, rapacious capitalism because they worshipped Anne Rind. The end. Okay, so Margaret Atwood is not in touch with reality. Okay, she's gone bonkers. She's around the corner, nuts. Okay, this is the reality of the trans situation and the reality of what happens when you indoctrinate children into this cracked ideology, and it is a cracked ideology. Brian Passafume says Danielle Senecal, accused in Saturday's sexual assault of a toddler in Welland, was released early from the 18-month sentence he got from sexually assaulting a 12-year-old boy in 2021, the boy's mother tells me. And so he shouldn't have been in Welland. He was close to the person he assaulted in 2021, the 12-year-old, and he was, and then he assaulted horrifically, by the way, this child in their home. And that's just, I mean, how do you even begin to deal with that? That's just absolutely crazy stuff. Here is the coach. So the background on this story before I show you what he said, I guess, Jim says, Alberta football coach was fired for saying schools are pushing transsexuality on students. School staff everywhere are depraved of free speech by woke cultists and communists in management roles. True. My case is similar, fired for having a rational opinion, and he's right. So here is Coach Tej, I think is what his name is, and he's a volunteer. He's a volunteer, okay? He doesn't get paid. His wife is a teacher at the school that the principal just called and fired him from being the coach over this video, okay? And we're just going to listen to a little bit of it, but here we go.
Tragic event today by a left-wing radical trans person who decided to take their hatred of Christians to a level that is sickening but becoming all too frequent in the last few years. Now, of course, the left-wing radicals will blame the instruments that were used and not the actual person that used the instruments. They don't want to admit that their ideology is creating psychotic people filled with hate. Now, this hate is manufactured. This hate is being told to people that they must have it because these people are, these Christians and Catholics, these MAGA right-wing people are out to get you, and they're your oppressors, and the reason why you don't have a happy life, the reason why you're depressed, the reason why you have anxiety, the reason why you don't fit in, it's all because of them. It's because they hate you. But the reality is we don't see this the other way around. We don't see Christians going and doing this to trans people. We see Christians praying for these people to find God, to find the light, to get out of their depression, to get out of their anxiety, to get away from left-wing politics that cripples people. And here's the reality. 7 of the last 7 of these perpetrators have doing these things at schools. I got to be careful what I say on TikTok. Have been trans or non-binary, a part of the LGBT.
You monster, you're fired. How dare you notice this trend? How dare you notice it? Right? Pretty wild stuff. So here's just a little bit of the article. So it's pretty crazy stuff. Alberta high school football coach Taylor Tej Johnson, I don't know, I'm sorry, keeps his politics off the field and out of the locker room, but his views landed him in hot water when a TikTok video of his found its way onto the screen of the school's principal, posting under his handle anti-woke 55555. Tej's nearly 5-minute video says the trans ideology is being pushed on kids who don't need it, exacerbating their mental health issues. He says this is creating a dangerous situation with mentally unhealthy trans and other gender confused people committing major acts of violence, such as the mass shooting in Minneapolis last week. And I scroll down just a little bit. Whatever one makes of Tej's views expressed on TikTok, they certainly weren't hateful. The Sylvan Lake man takes aim at trans ideology being peddled as a cure-all for confused, depressed kids, but not at the kids themselves. Coach Tej, 37, grew up in Red Deer until he and his wife moved to Sylvan Lake in 2015. Since then, she taught at the high school, and he coached football for free as a volunteer during the day he runs a sports academy. So he showed up to coach football, and they're like, "Listen, man, you can't come in and do this free work anymore." He's like, "I don't even work here." I know, we know. You can't fire me. I don't even work here, man. So here's Malcolm Gladwell, who is eating crow because he stood on the side of trans athletes being able to compete against women. And he regrets that decision now. And he says, I was bullied into it. I was bullied into that. I was progressively, he was so open, objectively. He says it at the end. And I thought it was really funny because I think that the two things are in conflict. You can't be the two things at the same time. Anyway, here is Malcolm Gladwell. Jennifer says, Malcolm Gladwell says trans athletes have no place in the female category. He admits he was cowed into saying that it was okay. He knows it's not. Everybody knows it's not. Everybody does. If you don't say clearly this is wrong and people should stop doing this nonsense, you have been either brainwashed or cowed by people, pressured to say that, oh yeah, that man definitely belongs in there competing against that woman right there. Sure, yeah, that's definitely. If you can't see that this is a completely bonkers thing, you're further gone than I care to contemplate, because that would be very, very bad. Anyway, here's Malcolm Gladwell. I think it's obvious. I think it's obvious that people are being strong-armed into this, and I'm glad that Malcolm Gladwell is speaking up. Good for him. I think I've read almost every single one of his books up till like 2015 or 16, maybe 2017, and I thought his investigative work was pretty good. Like a lot of the time, you've got people who are trying to push one side or the other, and it seems like his stuff tried to balance things. There was some good. He did a good podcast, Revisionist History, which I thought was pretty good. Anyway, here's Malcolm Gladwell.
If we did a replay of that exact panel at the Sloan Conference this coming March, it runs in exactly the opposite direction. And it would be, I suspect, near unanimity in the room that trans athletes have no place in the female category. I don't think there's any question. I just think it was a strange. I mean, the reason I'm ashamed of my performance at that panel because I share your position 100%, and I was cowed. The idea of saying anything on this issue, I was I believe in retrospect, in a dishonest way. I was objective in a dishonest way. If we did a replay of that exact...
I was objective in a dishonest way. You were objective so you're not objective, you're just being dishonest. Yes, I was very objective in a very dishonest way. It was dishonest objectiveness. Sure, Malcolm. But I'm glad he's saying it. Males don't belong in the female category. USA Cycling agrees. Icon says USA Cycling, which surrendered more women's podium spots to male athletes than any other governing body, has released a new policy. Only those female at birth may compete in the women's category. So there you go. Easy, done, wrapped up, right? And so here is what's going on. Confusing children about their gender leads to people not having babies. If you're not excited about having a baby, right? It takes somebody being excited about having a baby to make a baby happen. Men do what women want, right? If women want a dog, let's get a dog. If women want a baby, men are like, okay, let's have a baby, right? It's not, I wanted a baby, right? I wanted kids. And I'm sure there are lots of men out there who are like me, but oftentimes it's the woman who's like, hey, let's do this whole thing. So if women are believing that they're men, they're not going to be pushing for that. If they're confused about having a baby or if they think it's a bad idea because climate change, they're not going to be pushing for that. Where we need people who are excited about having a baby, excited about raising their kids, right? And we don't have that in the West. We have a cracked system where people are confused about their gender and they damn well shouldn't be. Look between your legs. Here's Concerned Citizen, and he's saying these guys are having a discussion about how bad is the birth decline in the Western world, and it's shockingly bad. And we're going to find out. We're going to find out, unfortunately. You might have to have a Terminator robot take care of you and bathe you and things like that, or get made because there isn't anything to do those things. Here's this conversation.
How bad is our birth decline?
It is shockingly bad. So we are now at 1.6 per woman. Our replacement rate is 2.1.
Wow.
It is going to be a shock, a huge shock, when our generation ages and there's no one there to do important services. This is how civilizations die. Like, who takes care of boomers when they're in their 80s and 90s? If you do not have a generation of workers, society starts crumbling. I'm a firm believer that the most important institution in America is the family. The family used to exist to take care of the people who were weakest. Now the state has to take care of them, which is why you see a lot of these people on the street. Oh, well, we went from 2.1 to 1.6. That can't be that bad. In a couple generations, that means that our population has shrunk by half.
In a couple of generations?
Yeah, but I actually think the bigger problem is cultural and spiritual. Feminism did change the memes and the culture, but no one talks about when you introduce birth control into a society. All of these declines in the industrial world started at the exact same time that the pill was introduced. Something magical changed in the 60s and the 70s. Abortion was made legal in 1973. Other nations followed. There's a reason why the birth rate is so low in these countries.
How bad is our birth decline?
Pretty bad. So pretty wild stuff, right? I'm way over the time goals, but this is the last one for this stream today, and then we've got lots of show left. ViceGuard says more than 700 schools have been closed in Greece due to a prolonged demographic crisis. Greece has been one of the lowest fertility rates in the European Union, around 1.3 births per woman, far below the replacement level of 2.1. The population is rapidly aging, while young people are leaving the country in large numbers. In the 2025-26 academic year, 721 schools will be closed after failing to reach the minimum threshold of 15 students required to remain open. So the demographics are just collapsing across Europe and indeed across the West, and paving a way for handing the country over to invading third worlders who are supported by our tax dollars. Weird, right? Super weird. So, that doesn't seem good, but the plan seems on track. And it seems like if you were on track to go to a terrible, terrible place, but you wanted to change where you were going to go to, that's very difficult because you're on the track and the track is going to one place. And to change where the track is going to go, you have to maybe switch off the track if that's an option. But if there's no other option, you got to stop the train and build another track. And like, that's very difficult. And the track that's being built, well, I'm going to talk about it in the next section, but the next section's invasion. So the track that's being built, I'm sure you can figure it out. So that's enough for the stream. Thanks for watching, everybody, and we'll catch you tomorrow. If you want the whole show, head over to CanadaPoly.com. If not, that's okay. We'll see you tomorrow. And